I'm just doing this out of laziness. Maybe I'll say that. Okay, so 15 minutes, right?
What's that?
15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so my name's Jim and I'm a sex addict.
Yeah.
And I was raised in a Christian home. My parents weren't perfect. They took me to church Sunday morning for Sunday school, to church, to evening church, to Wednesday night Bible study. I went to youth group and summer camps and vacation Bible school, and nobody ever abused me or treated me badly, and they weren't two-faced, and they weren't faking. They were real Christians doing the best they could to live out their faith. So I got no excuses. I got saved young. So, most people have a testimony like this, I was in the gang and I was a hitman and, then Jesus saved me and now I'm wonderful. So what happened with me is I got saved and then I got crooked. I don't know how that happens, but that's what happened with me. So, my dad didn't have a stack of Playboys under his bed because he was a straight up dude. I heard him say one cuss word in his whole life. He was describing something. He said it was crappy. That's the worst word I ever heard my dad say. They had one fight because he told my mom that he was not going to buy me a mini bike, and then he bought me one. So she wasn't happy. So he had an auto supply, and in those days, this is talking the 70s, there's these catalogs in there for all kinds of different car parts and stuff. And back in those days, what they did was they'd have these very sexy looking ladies in bikinis and stuff, standing there, or there in the picture, you know what I'm saying, with the Doug Thorley headers, there's a lady there, and she looked good, So that was like the pornography for me, as a young teenager that I started acting out on. And I'm looking at people in church, and they looked like they were, they got saved and then they were perfect. That's how it looked to me. I was looking at their outsides, and my insides weren't measuring up to their outsides. So I'm thinking, did I do something wrong when I asked the Lord into my life? I probably accepted the Lord 50, 100 times, I don't know. Just because I didn't feel like, I felt like I was, what I felt like? I felt like I fell through the cracks, or the Lord made me crooked and he couldn't straighten me out. I don't know, I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, everybody else asked the Lord into their life, and then boom, they're perfect. And I'm not perfect. I've got a lot of stuff going on. Oh, by the way, I'm going to give you like a quick testimony, and then if I got time, I'm going to try to share something with you that I think the Lord showed me, a little something out of the Bible, as I was leaving Pensacola, and it blew my mind, because it's this verse that used to bother me, and then he sort of like explained it to me with some other verses, so it was amazing. So at the end, I'm going to tell you that. So, I go in the Army, I could have been a commercial fisherman, and that's kind of like died out for different reasons. Could have been a logger, that's kind of died out for different reasons. But I don't want to do either one of those. And a guy had come in there to the gymnasium, talking about the Army, and you can be in the Army for 20 years and retire, and I'd blown the motor in my 66 Chevelle, drag racing somebody, and I got fired from my job for being a knucklehead, and I says, I'm gonna go in the Army. So I called the guy. The guy was, it was like, I called and boom, he was like at my door like that, and he was like 75 miles north. I don't know how he did it. And my parents are like, I was 17, they're like trying to disguise these ear-to-ear smiles on their face as they're signing for me to go in the Army. Because I think they were, I was a knucklehead, that's all I can tell you. So, I go in the Army, and all I can tell you is, here Here's a thought I had. I'm a sex addict, right? So I'm thinking marriage will solve this problem. That's what I thought. It didn't work. You know, it worked for a while. I mean, things were wonderful and perfect, you know, but for a while. And then this ugly monster raises its ugly head in my life again. So, you know, that marriage didn't last. We didn't have any kids. It lasted 3 or 4 years or something. Went belly up. So then I met the girl of my dreams. Gorgeous. I was in love. I said I wasn't in love before. I didn't love. I had a good time. She was nice. She had curves and she was good looking and we had a good time. So I thought, I didn't know what in love was, I guess I know. So I married the first one and it didn't work out. So but now I'm in love. So this is going to work out. It's going to be great and solve my problem. And it did for a while. And then it came back, you know. And so, anyways, without going into any more detail, I'm just going to tell you that what ended up happening, see, these kind of things are progressive. You know what that means, right? Like the first time you try, you drink some beers, and so then you're always trying to chase that buzz that made you feel so good, and then it just gets worse and worse, and eventually you're like, you know, drinking 24 packs or whatever it is, you know, to try to get it. You can't get it. I don't know if you ever heard of Jeffrey Dahmer. You ever heard of him?
Yes.
So supposedly he started out looking at porn, raised in a Christian home, and you know how he ended up, right? He's got like pieces of his homosexual lovers in the freaking freezer that he's been eating them and stuff. So, I mean, it's not going to end well. It's going to get worse, you know what I'm saying? So, mine didn't get quite that bad, at least it hasn't yet. So, thank you, Jesus, right? Amen. So what happened was, I was a missionary, a Christian missionary on the mission field. And I got tangled up with another woman, you know, I was married, I got kids, and I'm out there being a missionary, and I'm having something going on with another woman at the same time. So, anyway, fast forward, you know, we get sent to Miami. We get sent to a place for counseling for pastors and missionaries that have, you know, some kind of crash and burn on the mission field. My whole family has to get sent there. The worst thing about this, I don't know if you agree with this, but the worst thing about any kind of addiction is when you hurt your family, you know, like it's, you know, they're going through some crap that you freaking caused them, you know. So, anyhow, so I get sent here, and one of the guys that Woody mentioned, Chuck Dixon, he's my marriage counselor, my personal marriage counselor. And he used to say, you know, Jim, why do you feel so entitled? And then, like later on, to this day, sometimes I'll think and I'll say, what is that word that Chuck used to say? And I can't remember the word, you know. So I know it definitely has something to do with me being entitled, you know, thinking that I deserve something. But there came a time when I went up to, like, we were in counseling. We're trying to get our marriage together enough that we can get back with our missions program, right? Our missions organization. And so we go to this meeting in Orlando, and there was this guy, he's pretty cool, that was in charge of, you know, getting us back on track or whatever. And I thought, you know, I'm cool with him. And I thought it was all going to work out. So we're going up there to have this meeting. And as we walk into the lobby, we said, we're here to see such and such. And they said, well, you know, he was just outside at lunchtime playing basketball and he broke his arm. He's on the way to the hospital. So, you know, these some other people, they're going to take care of you. And so it turned out there was this lady that she wasn't quite as cool as that dude was. So at the end of I met with some guy, my wife met with her, and at the end of it, they decided our marriage wasn't up to snuff. And that, we needed to step back from ministry and work on our marriage some more, and then we could come back. So, we're driving, we turned in the paperwork, we tendered our resignation, headed back to Miami. I'm thinking I'll be a UPS driver, I'll be a DHL driver, I'll just stay in shape, deliver them packages and freaking make money and work up through the organization and get a bigger car, bigger house, bigger, better, whatever people do, I don't know. And I says to my wife, I says, I'd like to serve the Lord. Well, I was thinking really in my own head, but nobody, any ministry is going to say, well, why'd you leave your last organization? And then I'll say, the reason, and then they'll say, we'll call you, that would have been it. So while I'm driving back, I think what happened was Chuck Dixon called me, the guy, one of the founders. He's a psychologist. So he says, let's have breakfast Saturday morning. So I thought he just wants to give me a shoulder to cry on. So we meet for breakfast, and Chuck says, remember when we were in counseling and I said to you, why don't you just be a missionary with AliveAgain? And you said you pray about it. And I says, yeah, I remember, but I hadn't prayed about it. I was trying to get back with the other organization. And he says, well, as I'm driving, he says, well, why don't you be a missionary with AliveAgain? I says, I'll pray about it. And I says to myself, this time I prayed about it. And I talked to my wife about it. I says, any other organization won't have me because I'm screwed up. These guys want me because I'm screwed up. It's crazy, it's the Lord saying, how the Lord kind of funnels you somewhere. It's like, the Lord's like, this is your spot right here, So the best thing I ever did was come on board with AliveAgain. The burden is light. The Lord said, the yoke and the burden will be light with him, and that's how it is with AliveAgain. Now, Chuck says, let's we're going to have a meeting with Russell at Miss Saigon Bistro. So it was me, Woody, Russell, and Chuck. And I'm telling Russell, yeah, Russell, this is maybe the first time I ever met Russell, I don't know. And I didn't know him yet, you know what I'm saying? So I says, yeah, Russell, but it was like 2 years, but me and this woman, I was talking about the deal that happened in Panama. I says, we were only physical like 4 times. And Russell's like, wow, Jim. He's like, look at me, 4 times. He says, most guys, it would have taken at least 7. Oh man. And he says, we're going up. We're going to do what I do with this ministry tonight. You want to come along with us? You can see what it's like, see if you want to be a part of it. So I go up there. I'm standing in the back of this AA room, and it's standing room only. There's not a seat open. I'm standing, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing here with all these alcoholics? And I thought I was better than an alcoholic. I don't know. I've thought about that many times later. I don't know where I got that at. I don't know. But he started talking. He says, when we feel isolated, we have negative beliefs about ourselves, which are painful and need to be medicated. And he says, what we really always wanted deep down inside were spiritual relationships with people. And he kept talking, and the whole time he was talking, you could have took out alcohol and put sex in there, and he was talking to me the whole time. And so on the way back, he says, Saturday morning I got this meeting, you might like it. He told me when and where. He says, I think you should come. So I says, okay. So Friday night, I'm laying there in bed trying to go to sleep, and I'm thinking that the next morning I'm going to go to this meeting, which met right out here outside in a circle. And on Saturday mornings used to be called the As Bill Sees It group. Now it's called the Workshop. Yeah. And it's online instead. But it was in person in those days. And I was thinking that Friday night before that meeting, I says, is that one of the meetings where they're going to say, my name's Fred and I'm an alcoholic, and everybody's going to say, hey, Fred. my name's Joe and I'm a drug addict, and everybody's going to say, hey, Joe. And I says, what am I going to say? And I thought, well, you know, I'm going to say, well, my name's Jim, and I was a missionary on the mission field, and I got tangled up with another woman. I says, no, that's too weird, you know. And then this thought came to me. Why don't you just tell him you're a sex addict, because that's what you are. And I knew it didn't come from me, and I knew I didn't think of it, so I went to sleep. I says, that's from the Lord. Now it was kind of scary, but I thought it came from the Lord, so I went to sleep. So I'm driving over there that morning, and starting to have some second thoughts. Get into the meeting. Everybody looks like they're in some pro sports team. They got muscles, they got tattoos. And I'm starting to have second thoughts. And they start reading from the book, as Bill sees it. 366 readings. Bill Wilson wrote it. And something in there said, was I always honest in my sexual relationships? And my time's up. All right, so I've heard hundreds of readings out of that book since then. I've never heard one that had anything to do with sex. And I didn't know that then. I just, when they said that, it was like the Lord said to me, just say what I told you to say when it comes to you. So they're like, hey, my name's Fred, and I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Fred. Hey, my name's Joe, and I'm an addict. Hey, Joe. And he was coming around to me, and I says, my name's Jim, and I'm a sex addict. Hey, Jim. You know, and at that second, I wasn't isolated. I wasn't isolated anymore. I was just within a group of people that were broken, that were trying to find the answer through Jesus Christ to get better. Okay? Now, I'd like to tell you that I perfectly have never acted out. But all I'll tell you is I'm still married and I haven't been physical with a woman. That's what I'll tell you. So I'm still working on the pure, 100% pure person, okay? And hopefully I'll get there before the testosterone is gone, so I can tell the Lord that, you know, I had something to do with it. I don't know, whatever. But I'm sorry. Just a couple things, buddy. I got to tell you this because I think the Lord told it to me. Okay, so when I was a kid, I heard this verse, and it bothered me. And this is what it says. If your righteousness does not exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Has anybody ever heard that before? Does that give you hope? Does that, you know, I'm thinking to myself, these guys were following all these rules and regulations. I mean, they made the Encyclopedia Britannica that they added to the Bible. What do they call it, the Talmud or something? You know, and they're putting, okay, I'm thinking, I gotta exceed that? Well, let me tell you what the Lord showed me. He says this. This is what these dudes were like, scribes and Pharisees, right? He says, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, so you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. So what do we got to do to be more righteous? We don't put heavy loads on people. We practice what we preach. We tell the truth in meetings. We humble ourselves. We walk with other people through recovery. So that's how you exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. Here you go, brother.